Just saw 3:33 on the dot. Hello and welcome to the Jules with Gem podcast. I am your host GiGi and I hope you're well. If you're new, welcome. I'm honored to have you here, and if you're returning, I'm so humbled that you are back. And so in true retrograde fashion, my phone went through a malfunction of some sorts and got wiped out. Okay, well maybe not wiped out completely. Maybe I'm just exaggerating, but most of my thumbnail art, my apps, my documents, some of my pictures, even some of my video visuals have been deleted. I honestly don't even know how that happened or what happened, but I think I'm just going to pick up the pieces because, it is Mercury retrograde after all, and this was kind of expected, so but I'm still here, I'm still standing, and maintain that no retrograde or weapon formed against me or you shall prosper. So let's get right into it. We are continuing talking about the planets individually because, as I always say, I feel a lot of the time we are given surface level definitions of what the planets mean. For example, the sun, they tell you that the sun represents individuality and creativity. However, we don't even know what that means, or at least I found definitions like that to be quite confusing, as there are 12 astrological zodiac signs. So, creativity and individuality will be expressed very differently in each of the signs. So now that we have an understanding of the signs, energies, we can now move on to understanding the planets, which I'm very excited about. So there are 10 planets, namely the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, and last but not least, Saturn. So in your birth chart, there are 12 houses, which rules 12 aspects of your life. So just think of the 12 houses as different aspects of your life. Like your first house will represent you and your body, and your 12th house will represent the parts of you that is quite spiritual, the parts of you that that would explain the type of solitude that you need, the type of spirituality that you need, the things that you mostly keep hidden. So basically each house is an explanation or energies of different parts of your life, and that's just basically the simplest way to explain it. So because there are 10 planets, there are going to be houses that don't have any planets in them, or there can even be houses that have a lot of planets in one house. So for example, you could have a lot of planets in your 5th house, and that would mean that you have a stellium in that house, which means that there would be a lot of energy in that house. So the 5th house has to do with children, creativity. So you might be somebody that's quite fun because it also represents fun. The 5th house is all about fun, it's all about creativity, it's all about children, it's about gambling. It's just basically, life's activities, if I can put it that way. So if you have a stellium, which is more than 3 planets in one sign or one house, then it just basically means that there's going to be a lot of energy dedicated towards these activities that I mentioned before, such as having fun, gambling, children. You might be a teacher. So there's a lot of possibilities, but it's definitely important to understand where all of your energy is actually going, so that you're not spending time on things that are not really part of the plan, really. So yes, some houses that don't have planets are considered empty houses, and that just basically means that there is not much focus on those houses. If you have, of course, everyone has empty houses, so those empty houses are houses that you don't really have to focus much on. Like I have an empty 11th house, so my relationships with my friends and collaborations and dreams are not really much of a focus right now. My focus mostly lies in my 9th house, because that's where I have, I think, about 4 planets in the 9th house. So my pursuit currently, my purpose is to understand the things of the 9th house and to fulfill that purpose. So Neptune, we're talking about Neptune. Neptune. A luminous, nebulous, turquoise marble looking like globe. In the solar system, at least, it's reported to have about 8 moons and is considered in astrology to be an outer planet. So remember, outer planets are also considered generational planets. And basically what that means is that if a planet is generational, people within your age group, or people that were born in the same year or about for not more than 10 years in your age group, then you guys will share the same outer planet. So Neptune, if you were born in 93 and probably up until 95, I think up until 95, I'm not too sure, but if you were born between 1984 and 1995, I think it is, then you would probably have a Pluto in Scorpio, you'd probably have a Neptune in Capricorn, you'd probably have a Saturn in Aquarius. So we would then share these planets in the same signs. Of course, that doesn't mean we're the same, but in all likelihood, we probably have the same vision when it comes to what type of life it is that we think we should be living, or how life should be lived, or even the same views on, death and rebirth and transformation and things of that nature, which Pluto rules. So just because we have the same generational planets does not mean that we are going to feel the same way about things in general, because we also have to take the fact that Pluto could be anywhere in your chart. Pluto could be in your first house, it could be in your second house, it could be in your third house, it could be in your seventh and in your 12th, So just because we share the planet and it's a generational planet does not mean that it's going to be in the same houses for everyone. So we need to keep that in mind. So Neptune, like I said, it's an outer planet. It's got 8 moons. I'm always just asking myself, like, okay, it has 8 moons. Does that mean, does it go through the same phases that, the moon on Earth goes through? And if it does, that would be absolutely incredible. But then I also have another question. How does it then, do all of the moons go through different phases at once? Like, would there be a moon that's going through, would we see a crescent moon? Would we see a waning moon? Would we see, a gibbous moon? What is going on? Like, I'd really love to know that, but I don't think I'm going to find that out in this lifetime. But anyway, it's said to be just a ball of gas, if I can put it that way, that is just kind of circulating around a metal core. Apparently, it does have a ring that looks like it's made out of metal. In astrology, it is referred to as the Roman god of the sea, which should come as no surprise, seeing as, Neptune is a water sign. But not only that, I think it's also the fact that it just has no end. And if you think about the sea, if you think about the ocean just has, no end. It's love. When you think about Neptunian love, like the love itself is just unconditional. Its compassion just touches the soul of strangers even, and the acceptance that they have for people, is just, it goes beyond barriers. I think it's also the same energy as Aquarius as well, because Aquarius is also very accepting, non-judgmental, but I think that's almost like a logical connection more, and this would be the emotional connection to just be accepting of people and just be like, oh, okay, well, they are like that, life goes on, and just not want to change it in any way, not have any inclination to change it, and just accept the person as they are. So before we even begin, I just want to say that Neptune is no more spiritual than any other planet. I think the approach that Saturn or Mercury or even Jupiter has to spirituality is obviously going to be different. One of the differences I have noticed while observing Neptune, though, is that it's more about energy. It's more about things that are underneath the surface. And it's also about the veil between reality, or rather this current dimension that we're living in, and other dimensions that are unknown to us. So Saturn may experience their spirituality through, achieving what needs to be done here on Earth and carrying out that purpose, no matter how tough the journey is. Mercury could probably engage in spiritual endeavors while reading or even accumulating knowledge, probably by traveling, and then sharing it with the rest of humanity. And then you have Jupiter, who may experience spirituality by making sense of the bigger picture, by really trying to understand the meaning behind everything, really getting a 360-degree view of everything and just being like, oh, okay, this is why things are the way they are. And each having its own way of going about it. But it is still spiritual nonetheless. So we cannot discredit, because I think a lot of the time I've seen in the books that I've read, on the sites that I've been, and even in conversations that I've engaged in, I think a lot of the time people think that Neptune is the only spiritual planet, Jupiter is the only spiritual planet, when really each planet has its way of going about spirituality. Because at the end of the day, spirit is within us all. And I'm assuming that, if you're into astrology, each and every planet and sign has its own spirit or has its own individuality. You are able to discern the difference between Saturn and Jupiter, for example. So the energies will be expressed differently, and how anyone perceives spirituality is really it's really very subjective, because that will appeal to that person. It's a very personal thing. So I just wanted to put it out there that Neptune is not the only planet that is spiritual. I just think that maybe it is spiritual in a different sense to all of the other planets. So do keep that in mind. So like I said, each has its own way of going about spirituality, but it's still, spiritual for them nonetheless. I also would like to add that Neptune also experiences spirituality through the collective, as well as they have the capacity to pick up on others and their own energies. Whether they can make sense of these energies is also just another story on its own. But what I've noticed about them, specifically. It's more about how they feel energetically and empathize with others. And I just feel like they genuinely just empathize with others. Like, they are the empaths of, the world. Neptunian people, anybody that has aspects to their Neptune, that especially aspects to the sun, moon, I think Mercury as well, especially personal planets, if I can put it that way, these are the people that are going to be very compassionate, very caring. It's almost like they are just a ball that just never ends. Like, no matter what they may go through, and trust me, they do go through a lot of backlash, especially from society, because I'd like to think that Neptunian energy is not energy that is supposed to be in this realm, to be honest. But I do understand that it is Neptunian people and Piscean people's purpose to make it known that spirituality does exist, and being in your own solitude is definitely a good thing, so that you can just understand yourself better. But of course, I'm going to touch on that a bit later in the segment. So like I said, Neptunian energy has the capacity to pick up on others and their own energies, and it's hard for them to kind of make sense of the energies that they're picking up, because they're not even sure if the energies are their own, are they of other people around them, and sometimes they don't even know how to help the people around them, because they don't even know where the energies are coming from, really. So they can really empathize with how other people feel, and it's not even about them doing anything physically to come to the understanding. I think it's just a knowing. It's just a gut feeling. It's just a permanent feeling of, I know this is what it is. And what I love most about this energy is that it is not boastful. So even if it does know certain things about people and how people feel, it doesn't go around saying, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally knew that. Or yeah, it won't go around being judgmental. It won't go around being boastful. It won't go around just being in your face about your business. It'll just flow like the water. It's basically how Neptune operates. So most Neptunian people can really find themselves slipping quite easily into depression, because of the fact that they intuitively know that humanity is in a really, really dark space, spirituality, especially now. They just know that people aren't pure, and people are just not operating from their highest selves, and they know this. So Neptune is the ruler of the 12th house, and the 12th house rules, dreams and visions, intuition, our imagination, our subconscious, things that are hidden beneath the surface, things that we cannot see. So basically, these are our blind spots. These are the things that we haven't yet admitted to ourselves, and hopefully we do get to a point to admit it. It's also associated with glamour, so the arts, dancing, creativity, poetry, writing, dancing even. I'm not even sure if I mentioned that, but I think also the reason why Neptune is even associated with creativity, such as, the arts, dance, writing, it's not even surprising that Neptune would be associated with dancing, because, this energy rules the feet. So these people are definitely quick on their feet, or mostly just even find themselves walking in like two different directions, as the glyph of Pisces is always showing, just like two fishes that are completely in different directions. It's like they're in reality, but they're also in another reality as well, which is very, very interesting, because this is the whole dynamic that Neptune and Piscean people actually face. They know intuitively what's going on, but in the 3D sense of it all, there's nothing much that they can do. They don't have any control over what is currently happening, if I can put it that way. So I didn't mean to go off track there, but it's not surprising that Neptune would be associated with dance. So it's associated with all of these creative outlets, music, and also poetry as well, because it finds expression in these activities. More than anything, Neptune is about vibes. Neptunian people can't really articulate. Like, if you have a Mercury in Pisces, I can only imagine the frustration you must have trying to explain what's going on in your logical mind, because most of the time what's going on logically does not come through when you're speaking, when you're communicating. So it's very hard to communicate with others, or others seem to not understand you, or you might be saying things, but then it just seems like you're just contradicting yourself, at all points. So you might really be a great scriptwriter, though. You might really be a great poet. You might really be somebody who just really just has an intense imagination, and you're probably able to articulate this creativity when it comes to writing, because Mercury is all about communication. It's all about writing. So Mercury and Pisces definitely have a gift for being imaginative and forward thinking when it comes to fantasy, if I can put it that way. But in the most practical sense, communicating and trying to put your point across, probably not the best placement, but it is a placement that people have nonetheless, and we need to be sensitive about that, because it's not people's fault that they were born with a Mercury in Pisces, or a Venus in Aries, for example, or a Venus in Virgo. So we really need to be mindful. I think a lot of astrologers need to be mindful and not call aspects or even planets in certain signs as detriment or in fall, because it really is depressing reading some of that content. Again, going off track, but I think somebody needed to know that. I think somebody needed to hear that. So I think I've done my job as far as that. But yes, so Neptunian energy expresses itself in all of these activities, like like I mentioned, in art, in storytelling, in writing, etc., etc. So more than anything, Neptune is about vibes. They just can't articulate, as I mentioned before, what it is that they experience, because they pick up on energy so quickly. But also, when I think about Neptune, I think about Neptune as a release. It's just a release of emotions. It's a release of thoughts, a release of fears. It's a release of ego, because Neptune dissolves the ego. There's no ego when you're dealing with Neptune, because Neptune understands that we are all one. We all come from source, and to source we are going to return. So I also feel like Neptune is just the soul, how the soul expresses itself, because these are just These are all releases that we cannot see, if you know what I mean. Of course, we can see somebody dancing, but we can't really feel what that person might be going through while they are dancing, if that makes sense. And, we regard things that we cannot see, yet things that we can do, as things that are the most beautiful. And it's so saddening to me because I've heard so many negative things about Neptune and its influence, and how it just represents sadness, it represents doom and gloom, which, like I said, is definitely an unfair comparison, considering there are people who are Neptunian dominant or that have quite a number of 12th house placements. I think, again, astrology needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because ultimately Neptunian energy will be expressed differently and will affect us differently, as with all the other planets. I think adding to that, a lot of the hate over the years that is perpetuated by astrologers, I think it's also just a lack of understanding of the nature of Neptune. I also feel as though when it comes to Neptune specifically, if people don't have 12th house placements or any placements within Pisces, or just if they have, a Neptune that's unaspected or does not aspect anything, then I don't think that you can accurately describe the energy. Because even if you do, it just doesn't do it justice. I don't think people really understand what Neptune energy is about. I don't even, let me just leave it at that. But I will say Venus is exalted in Pisces, meaning that Venus actually likes to be here. Venus loves being in Neptune. Venus loves being in Pisces. It loves being aspected by Neptune. I know my Neptune trines my Venus. My Venus is in Pisces, so I definitely understand this energy completely. Venus represents love, and when it comes to Pisces has no boundaries, and that just simply means that the things represented by Venus, which are beauty, love, comfort, luxury, self-worth, and all of the other things that are associated with Venus, are going to be present without condition. So an individual with Venus in Pisces might be extremely beautiful, just like very mystic, if I can put it that way. They will be extremely creative. They will be extremely intuitive. They will be extremely loving. Jupiter is also co-ruler of Pisces. So, you guys already know Jupiter is just out here expanding everything. Like, Jupiter just makes everything grow. Jupiter just over exaggerates everything. So this is the type of energy that will just be blown out of proportion. If you are loved by somebody that has energy in Pisces, you will definitely feel it, and when they're no longer there, you will definitely feel it. You'll probably feel a bit sad that you even took advantage of it, because that's what usually happens with Venus in Pisces, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Pisces. Any type of energy within Pisces, there is a risk of getting hurt, because a lot of people will take advantage of you. But Pisces understand this already. They just get it. They just like, okay, I know people are probably going to take advantage of me, but that shouldn't really change who I am at the core. Because why must I go around changing myself for people? Am I going to change myself for everyone? Because in their minds, it really doesn't make sense. At the time, the person would have needed that unconditional love, that unconditional support, that unconditional care. So for them, it doesn't really bother them. They will definitely be crushed if, they do realize, and the rose-colored glasses come off, and they realize that the people that they thought were actually in their corner actually weren't. It will definitely hurt them a lot. And, it will definitely make them question themselves. However, they will be able to forgive you and eventually move on from that. And that's the most amazing thing about this energy. Again, I digress. I think I'm just going off track with this energy because I love it so much. So yes, like I said, an individual with Venus in Pisces, for example, will be extremely beautiful, almost mystic looking, extremely creative, extremely intuitive, extremely loving. But of course, this also depends on aspects. However, generally, this nature will definitely be limitless. Like I mentioned prior as well, they do tend to get taken advantage of a lot because of the fact that they don't see anything wrong with giving this energy freely. They don't see anything wrong with loving somebody unconditionally. They don't see anything wrong with that. They don't see anything wrong with, wanting to merge with the partner. They don't see anything wrong with spending as much time with their partner as physically possible. They don't see anything wrong with this. But also, we're not saying that, Pisces energy is clingy, because, a person might have Venus in Pisces, but then it's aspected by Uranus, which would make them totally loving and accepting, but also willing to give you your space, or really be into relationships that are quite unorthodox. They'd definitely be into relationships that are unorthodox, because Uranus is just that. It's unorthodox. It's it's energy that is just different. It's energy that is unique. So it's definitely not going to be about their love life. Is probably not going to be mainstream. Let me just put it that way. So Neptune energy is also not fixed, it's mutable, so it just goes with the flow. Not much caution to logic, I think, would be the biggest thing here. I think if you do have Neptunian energy, or if you are Neptunian yourself, then you might want to really just take, in your moments of solitude, just take a lot of time to just kind of understand what's going on in your life, understand the different types of energies that are within your space, understand people, really understand your relationships and things of that nature, to also avoid having relationships that are really not good for you, not healthy for you, where it's just people are just constantly taking from you. That's one of the things that I would definitely advise to people who have this energy. Definitely do bring logic to the table, because like I said, Pisces is such a go with the flow energy that they really don't care. It's kind of just like, oh well, let's just go with the flow. Maybe the universe is trying to show me something, but definitely I'd say please bring your head with. You can love people unconditionally, but just make sure to bring bring logic into the mix. I feel as though if you are loved by somebody who is Neptunian, then you're definitely going to be loved and appreciated. There's nothing that they wouldn't do for you. But like I said, if they do find out that you are not that into them, it is going to be extremely painful. They can find themselves loving and appreciating a lot of people that are just not genuine, which is just incredibly sad. However, they do know that love is the highest vibration that we should all be operating on, and being on that love vibration also just doesn't even require a lot of energy as much as hate would. Love is free flowing. Love is just being and accepting everything the way that it is, and not wanting to alter it in any way, not wanting to prohibit it, not wanting to control it, not wanting to just allowing it to just be. The only thing, it's like trying to grow a flower. You put the seed in the soil and you just keep on watering it. That is how they perceive. That is how Pisces energy perceives things in their life. The only thing they need to do is just put the seed in there and just keep watering it. Give it enough light, give it enough shade, give it enough time to be on its own, and just let it be. Of course, that is the evolved energy. I'm not talking about how every single Piscean would have this type of energy. So yeah, like I said, they can find themselves appreciating and loving people that are just not good for them. They believe that love is just the highest vibration, and that's what they should be vibrating on. That's really the food for their soul. It's such an accepting energy. It's the kind that just understands, the kind of love that most probably the creator or God or the universe just has for its people. Anyone with Venus in Pisces, like I said, Venus in the 12th even, or a Venus placement that is aspected by Neptune would definitely understand this energy. I'm not even sure how Neptune can even be perceived in a distasteful way, because I feel like it is the epitome of release, as I'd mentioned before, the epitome of loss, especially the loss of ego. It's also a representation of compassion towards others, the ones who just understand that we all come from source. All right, and from source we shall return. Biblically, we are from dust, and to dust we shall return. It's just all things spiritual, from 3D to 5D, reality versus illusion, ego versus the soul, the mind versus the heart, intuition versus logic. This is what Neptune is constantly battling against. And just understand that this world that we're currently living in is just not meant for Neptunian energy, unfortunately. And I say this because it just absorbs so much energy, it absorbs so much of the feelings of others and even their own, which eventually become intertwined, and they end up taking this burden. They end up the feelings and emotions of other people, and even the problems of other people eventually become their own, and they try to fix them, and when they can't fix them, it really does get to them energetically, physically, mentally, emotionally, especially. It definitely can drag them down, where they get to a point where they think that your problems are theirs, in a sense, if that makes sense. Like I said, where their feelings start and end, that is just a line that is just very thin, and it's often quite blurred. I don't know how else to explain this to people, but imagine being able to absorb countless amounts of energy, dare I even say especially negative energy, as we are currently living in a world where we are fighting against dark forces just constantly, and how that can actually mentally, spiritually, and most of all emotionally just screw with your version of reality. And how an escape or even long periods of solitude are just the only way to rejuvenate yourself. That's why a lot of people will say, oh no, Pisceans are just always in their head. No, we're not in our head. We are probably, alive in a different reality than how you would have us being in reality, in 3D, if we can put it that way. I don't know if this even makes sense to anyone, but to me, and probably to all Piscean people in general, it will probably make a lot of sense. But one could even say we enter into periods of solitude so that we can eventually just shut out the world and experience moments where we are with ourselves, and where God or the creator or the universe can speak to us. But I think for any sign, regardless, whether that sign is Capricorn, whether it's Aquarius, whether it's Aries, solitude is extremely important in understanding yourself and the things that you want, and even your motivations for doing the things that you do. So water is the element of Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune, as we know, and water is the symbol of life, because essentially water is the ingredient to most living things on earth. I mean, hell, we as human beings are made up of 80% water, the last time I checked. And these are in fact all qualities of Neptune, right, in the esoteric sense. So what's different about you as compared to Neptune? Let's not even be physical about it, because I know some people will be like, well, the difference is that I'm not a planet, I'm a body. You know what I'm saying? I'm not really talking about it in that sense. I mean it in the spiritual, esoteric sense. Do we not all in some way, shape, or form experience God, the universe, or even the creator speaking through us? Do we not possess intuition? I think humans in their basic nature are even elusive, as much as the 12th house and Neptune and Pisces is elusive in itself. I think Pisces understands that the only growth is constant. The only constant is growth. They understand that human evolution, especially in the spiritual sense, is the only thing that should be measured here. Was Neptune not first the god of the clouds and rain, and then was later promoted to being god of fresh and fertilizing water, I think it is, and then finally they were elevated to the god of the sea. I mean, does it even get better than that, honestly? How wide is the sea? How deep does the ocean go? And if we were to go deep into the ocean, what would we see? And I think a lot of times people just judge things they don't understand. People are just negative towards things they don't understand. But again, I digress. If we were to go that deep, would we even be ready for whatever it is we may find there? How do we even measure it? Like I said, where does it end? And I guess we can all come to a conclusion where we say there just is no end. The same way we cannot measure or seek to see the end of the development of humanity. It's just something that is infinite. Again, I say water being the element of Pisces, being ruled by Neptune, it just flows. It takes shape of whatever it finds itself in. It's very accommodating, very accepting, and it's very accepting of everything without the inclination to change it, as I'd also mentioned prior. Very loving as well, even in spaces where, trust me honey, they are just not welcome. But nonetheless, water is cleansing, water is purification, water is healing, water is protection, and dare I say, water is divine generosity. Everyone experiences water in some capacity. Water is holy once it's prayed on, and people call it holy water. There is just no other element that we can experience in four senses, not even in four. Okay, let me check. We can actually drink water. We can see water. We can touch water to a certain extent when it is in solid or in liquid form. We can hear water. And sometimes we can even smell water. So actually we can experience water in all of the five senses, and I don't think we can. I think it's the only element that we can do that for, because we can't really, touch air. We can't really. Yeah. Fire we can see fire, but fire we can't really touch. Because I'm trying to think of all the elements. There's fire, there's earth, there's air. Fire, air, earth, and water. Yes. So I think it's the only element that we can actually experience in that capacity. So like I said, water is cleansing, divine generosity, and everybody experiences water in some capacity, as I'd mentioned. So I think people associate the four elements with things that are relevant to the elements. So for example, a person would drown in water because it just wouldn't make sense to compare it to anything else. Or you'd say somebody is an airhead because the head is above all the other body parts, and air is above us, never beneath us. And in a way, he burns with passion because fire is the only thing that can burn. And we'd say somebody is down to earth because earth signs are usually grounded, right? If that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And I also wanted to talk about our subconscious. I think this might be actually one of those video uploads that are just incredibly long, because Neptune is just an energy that is so elusive. There's just so much to talk about. But anyway, yes, subconscious, the subconscious part of Neptune. So our subconscious is usually beneath our conscious. Of course, we know that. So meaning it's just under the surface. So we wouldn't get to experience it in our conscious state, because we don't bring a lot of the things that are within our subconscious to the light when we are awake and conscious. So it's only when we step into the dark that what lies beneath comes into consciousness through dreams. And I don't even want to say consciousness, because I mean, when you're dreaming, you're not exactly conscious. You're kind of conscious in another realm. You're not really conscious in the third dimension, if that makes any sense. So whatever it is that you're doing in the dream world, you are not doing it in the 3D world. That should make sense. So we are able to remember dreams sometimes because they would have made such a strong imprint on our consciousness that it's so vivid and it's easy to remember. We can write it down and be like, oh my gosh, this is what happened, and really find meanings of what our dreams actually are trying to tell us. I also find it uncanny how water represents emotions, and of course Neptune, being a water sign, also represents our subconscious and how we just really never want to go that deep. You know, with water, you're just like, oh, it's water. But when you think about the ocean, because obviously Neptune is known as the god of the sea, so how deep does this go? I think a lot of people just don't want to take the opportunity to really go that deep within themselves. I'm not even talking about really go deep into the ocean in the physical sense, but I mean, even with ourselves, we just don't want to go that deep with ourselves. There are just things that we just want to let, float around in our subconscious, and there's just a lot of things we just don't want to address. So we only go as far as we can see and as far as we are comfortable. And we can only see what we choose to see, which also means that what we choose to put light on, that's what we choose to put light on. That is what will make an imprint. And everything else is just unknown. Everything else is just a facade. Everything else is not really reality, is not really realistic. And that's just the energy of Neptune at its finest. A bit about the 12th house as well. It's just that part of ourselves that we need to uncover, because it's said to house, excuse the pun, all of the things about ourselves that we cannot express or that we cannot see, because as I mentioned prior, we have not brought these things up to the light. It's only when you meet people who affect your 12th house that you'll be able to be like, oh, okay, I have Aries in my 12th house. So Aries would automatically have their sun in my 12th house. So Aries people that I meet would be able to tell me my weaknesses or my blind spots. And it just kind of depends how they play this out, because a lot of the time, if people know your weaknesses, then they are likely to hurt you and harm you instead of grow you. Most of the time, they are likely to take this energy and actually use it against you, because a lot of the time they can see the energy, but they just won't say it. And when they don't say it, situations will then come up, and in those situations you'll soon realize that they are more than willing to throw you under the bus, if that makes sense. So for me, a lot of fire signs, I have to be quite careful, because fire is in all of my deep houses. So it's in my 12th house, it's in my 8th house, and it's also in my 4th house. So these energies can have a great impact on the experiences that I have. So Leo can have a great impact on my surroundings and how I think about my childhood, and and then 8th house can, Sagittarians can really have an effect on how I see money, on how I see relationships, and how I see everything that is of the 8th house. And then Aries also has a lot of influence. I don't want to say power, because power, it's mine. The power is mine. I can never give it away. Okay, I can give it away to other people, but I try not to. But in essence, they are able to really change the way I see things about myself as well. They can help me uncover a lot of things, or they can help me uncover these things and then eventually later use it against me. So it's definitely with a grain of salt. If you do have anybody aspecting your 12th house, definitely take into consideration what those aspects are, and you might want to get a little bit of more information on what that actually means, because trust me, it's not hidden, and you'll probably only wake up when it's too late, because remember also Neptune energy is rose colored, so you're not really seeing everything particularly clearly. So, like I said, we can only see the things that we choose to put light on or what makes an imprint. Everything else is just unknown, and that is the energy of Neptune, really. The 12th house, sure, this is definitely the place where we need to go if we're trying to get to know ourselves. This is part of how we should be doing our shadow work. Like I said, it's the house of things that are not seen by us ourselves, as I mentioned prior. So we can't see these things because we haven't brought it into our consciousness. It's still in our subconscious, if that makes sense. So therefore, it's things that we just cannot acknowledge. It's only when we do our shadow work, which is literally embracing the ugly parts of ourselves, which are driven by unconscious motivation. So when somebody is unconscious, like just think of it this way, when somebody's unconscious, they are not present in that reality. They're not present in the reality that they are used to, if I can put it that way. They are technically somewhere else, for lack of a better explanation. So when you tap into questioning yourself, for example, why do I feel that way? Why am I afraid of rejection? We then give ourselves the opportunity to unpack and to hopefully deal with whatever emotions come up after that. And if you'd like a practical example, I'd encourage you to really write down all of the things that make you feel insecure, all of the things that make you feel bad about yourself, all of the things that just make you feel uncomfortable, and ask yourself why these things why they make you uncomfortable, and write down the reasons, reflect, and then dissect each and every one of them. And you'll also find that the more you dissect, the more it actually seems elusive and it just becomes utterly confusing. The more we just dissect it, the smaller it actually gets. And that's perfect because it starts to lose its significance. This is how fear works. As soon as you do the things that you are fearful of, as soon as you do the things that actually make you scared, it's the doing of the thing that undoes the fear, if I can just put it that way. The more you do the things that you fear, the fearless you become. That's exactly what shadow work is about. It's about owning the parts of you that are ugly. It's about, I don't want to say ugly, but, lack of a better word. The parts of us that are bad. The parts of us that we don't really want to acknowledge. The parts of us that we think we wouldn't want to expose to other people because we wouldn't want to be judged for it. So all of those things that you think that you would be judged for, if people were to know about them, those are the things that are hidden in our 12th house. Those are the things that we need to bring to the surface. And like I said, the more you deal with it, the more you come to terms with it, the more it loses power, the more it doesn't have so much control over you and your emotions and if I can put it that way. So it loses significance because you would have dealt with it, you would have owned it, and after that there's just nothing left. I think also shadow work has really helped me because I may not be different physically, but I think in the manner that I view my world and my perceptions have changed greatly because of the fact that I've managed to go through some of my insecurities. I've managed to actually ask myself really harsh questions and just be like, but do you think this is even worth it? Like, why do you even feel this way? When do you think it started? And then I go all the way back to my childhood, because we also need to remember that our childhood influences a lot of the ways that we are right now, because we don't really deviate from that, and all of our experiences go to our subconscious because we don't remember them. And because we don't know how to deal with them in the first place. So it's only when we actually sit there and deal with whatever comes up is the only time that we are now able to come to terms with everything that's going on. So because I've embraced certain parts and certain things about myself, when somebody else spots these things, in a way, And when they spot them and it's in a way that's meant to like really break me down or make me feel bad about myself, it doesn't really have the desired effect because I've already dealt with that. So it's like the more we connect to our dark side, the more we connect to our subconscious, the better, because ultimately the task anyway in life is to achieve balance. So it's achieving balance between your yin and your yang, and understanding that both parts of ourselves can and should coexist. Pisces is the last sign, so therefore it is the balancing act that makes life this full circle, this 360-degree thing. We are all born like Aries, which is a baby, which grows to be an infant, and we grow into old age, having accumulated all of this wisdom and realizing how everything is one, and everything is connected, and that there aren't any coincidences. And nothing matters except for whatever you would have realized matters. And that would be subjective to everyone. And it's for this reason that I actually come to the conclusion that I cannot explain the 12th house or even Neptune to anyone, because like I said, it's the part of us that we cannot see. It's only the part of us that we can experience, and the only part of us that will make sense to us. Explaining it to other people will just be met with just a lot of backlash and negative vibes, and we're not trying to go there. So yes, it can be the big bad wolf under the bed to those who have yet to look under and really shine a bright torchlight onto it. But in my next video, I will be discussing Uranus, the original, eccentric, and unique one, and how that all correlates to our birth charts. And on that note, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Show me some love if you'd like, and subscribe to my channel. Again, your time is much spent. And your time is much spent. Wow. Your time spent is much appreciated. Till next time, you know what you do. So keep doing what you do. Peace, love, and most of all, light. I'm out.